Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week, I'm back talking to Gemma, who I kindly met at Tad's workshop about a month ago at the time of recording. We talked about why you should only be on one platform, how to, kind of break out of this kind of scam reality when it comes to kind of the coaching world and that kind of thing as well, because I think a lot of people are either looking to add coaching to their business, but potentially don't want it to be seen or perceived as this, like, I don't want to scam people. I want to help people. I want to serve. So we talk about that. I think they're really, really valuable conversations. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again. If you did take value from this conversation, why not be subscribed to the channel? And I'll see you in just a moment's time for this amazing conversation with Gemma. Take care.
Hello, thanks for having me. I am Gemma Gilbert. I used to be a secondary school English teacher. I am now a business coach, and very specifically, I help my clients build and get known for one group program that can form the foundation of their business and that they can enroll clients into on a monthly sustainable basis rather than using all out exhausting launches.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much for the time, Gemma. And to give the audience a little bit of context, we met through a mutual friend, client, connection, etc. That I was very fortunate enough to be able to film Tag Hargrave's workshop last month up in London, and we met through that. So that's where this connection comes from, because some people are curious about where and why. But is there, I mean, I was actually, this question's come to mind, so I'm going to start the show with it, I think. There's a lot of people who see courses, memberships, whatever you want to call it, as kind of snake oily. It's kind of been done a lot, but is there a high value there, etc.? I mean, what would be your response to that? Because there's been a lot of, the internet has been kind of plagued the last couple of years with everyone saying it is a get rich quick scheme, you could say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the coaching industry has quite a bad reputation for that because we see the snail boil, like the people that are maybe have the wrong vibe. I mean, interestingly, we met via Tad. Tad is all about ethical marketing, and I like to think there's a corner of coaches and marketers that are very ethical, and we tend to gravitate towards each other. So for me, I would just say curate your circle, decide who you follow. And a lot of our businesses, like mine, is very much based on your personal brand and trust. So it's not just about the course I'm selling. It's like, am I someone you want to learn from?
Yeah. I think for me, it's also about the longevity, maybe as well, that you have. Like, is it just clearly you're doing this to make money, that kind of thing, and then you're going to quickly turn it around? Or does it actually have like a, I hate using the buzzword community, but does it have a community or a value, an external value adding externally outside of the information? Because I think a lot of people potentially get into the trap of firstly not understanding that value is very subjective, and who are we to say that what we offer to the world isn't valuable to someone else, right? Because by proxy, by someone buying it, they clearly maybe assume or want or believe there is a level of value there, right? And I think some of the time it can be a bit underhand in some of the sales tactics that people use, and that's where I think, as you say, we can the ones that you would or one would believe are more ethical in that regard can rise above it, because I think we're going to show the test of time to show that, okay, yeah, well, maybe I have this coaching program, or yeah, maybe I have this course, but actually it's because it's another string to my bow potentially, and or I'm doing it because I've seen a need for it, rather than jumping on the bandwagon of it's the thing to do because you need to have a course.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just explain a course as a more leveraged way to serve. So I quickly reach capacity with one-on-one clients. Now, there's only really two ways you can go. You either hire a team, or you either raise your prices astronomically, and that didn't feel ethically right for me. You hire a team, which was never my vision to have a big team, or you create a more leveraged delivery style, and that's the route I took. But I guess the difference of the way I work towards some people's courses, I don't do any like DIY courses. They're all with weekly calls, one-on-one accountability. So it's just a more leveraged way. Instead of me repeating myself 100 times to clients, I'm like, go watch the video and then come onto the call with me so we can use our time really deeply. So I'm a big fan of like high touch group programs and courses, not kind of like go buy this for $37 or pounds, and go do it on your own.
I think that's a really important difference, right? And I think that's what, in my opinion at least, stood apart among many things, all of which I think we're going to discuss today, but of the approach, right? And I think that's the important element, right? Because I don't think we're in a scenario at the moment where having that model is a great thing to do, sure, but I think we need to be careful because of the amount of people who have tried to done it. The quote unquote scammers on YouTube, right? Who are like, here's $1,000 course where you don't actually get access to me. It's just me rambling on a video, etc. It's like, well, yes, we could make the subjective argument to say, well, the person buying it might see it as worth £1,000. Okay, that's up to them to choose. But actually, how does the me as the person creating it feel about that? Do I feel, because I would hate, for me, if I had I don't, but in a world where I do, I would hate to feel like I've ripped someone off. Does that make sense? Right? Like, for me, that's the most important element. And I think, it kind of leans in a little bit to something which you touched on in our pre-show call, which was, can we still in this reality sell high ticket offers? And that could be anything from, because it's all subjective, sure, but just for the sake of conversation, let's call high ticket anything from, say, £500 up, right?
Yeah.
And then low ticket is obviously anything below that. But should people be developing strategies that are more low ticket, you could say, at the moment?
I think in a landscape where trust is the biggest difficulty because of we have such access to information to scams. We are so wary now of making bad investments and becoming scammed. I do think that when used well, low ticket offers can build trust quickly when you choose to deliver quite a tangible result. So people are like, oh, I bought this thing and you did deliver this result. And now I'm maybe more susceptible or interested in the deeper support because you've proven to me that you do what you say. So I do think there's a role in that. And I do think there's a role for high ticket because for me, like what I help my clients with, uh, especially around the niching and messaging piece, you just can't do it for yourself. I've tried running group programs where everyone just has to DIY their messaging, but I always now start my program with a one-on-one call because that's actually the thing I'm really good at. That's the expertise I'm bringing to the table. So that's why, like, yes, high ticket programs allows me to work deeply with 30 to 40 clients at one time. And that means I have to put the price point at a point where I can just work with 30, 40 clients at one time.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important establishment, which is, this opinion on, no, actually what you're getting is a structured program that I've done myself that I can then supercharge your point A to point B, which is the transition that we sell as coaches. And I think there's a very different thing when, as you say, and we've discussed a lot about course and we move away from it in a minute, but it's like, here's £1,000 of some videos of me or Kajabi or etc. Other platforms are available, of course, but like, here's a set of courses where and for some people, right, to be fair, some people, excluding all the perks like the discounts or the community and all these other things you can kind of blanket into a course. So for some people, that information in the course from that person will be worth the money, right? So actually, who are we to say that it's a scam? The scamming element is potentially the sales tactics and the quote-unquote fake promises that the person makes in the sales journey of selling that course. What's in the video of the landing page, etc.
I think there's scamming tactics at every stage. So yes, in the sales and the pressure they use with, say, you have to make a decision within this 24 buying window, stacking bonuses so it makes it so ridiculous not to buy. That's one scam. But the other for me is not qualifying people in. So yes, it might be great if you're at this stage, but if you're 10 steps before, this is going to be meaningless to you, but we're going to sell it to you anyway because we care more about the money than we do your results.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing in business as well, which is, a lot of people look at what I do and it's like, yeah, we're video production, potentially we could be quite pricey, quite complicated, etc. Sure, but the first qualification or the first question I ask clients is, are you actually ready to do this? Right? And it sounds a really weird question to ask, right? Because in some ways I'm starting off the foot by saying, are you sure you want to hire me? But what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, well, what's your experience level? And or could you be doing stuff on your phone that actually serves what you need to do right now, so that in 6 to 12 months time we can have a more in-depth conversation from the data you've then gained, right? Rather than let's do a thing in the dark, let's throw a load of stuff against the wall and pray that something sticks, right? Because we're in a very fortunate position with online digital marketing where we can actually gain the data. It's not this stab in the dark reality that we need to do. We can categorically know we hit this demographic, we hit this type of person, we hit so on, and they reacted this way, right? Now, whether they should, I mean, it leans on to a question which really jumped out to me, because we're in a world where, hey, you need to be doing TikTok, hey, you need to be on LinkedIn, hey, you need to be doing email, hey, you need to be doing so on. But one of the things I know you talk about quite a lot is this concept around one platform. What for those who maybe don't know 100% what that means, what does that actually mean in your terms? Like when you say do one platform, what does that mean?
Well, what I mean is, let's talk about it in terms of social media, but I guess like YouTube sits slightly outside of that, doesn't it? Have one place where you are going to be attracting like cold leads, like people that don't know you, and then that could be the same place as you're then cultivating a relationship with them, but they could be different. So for me it's different because I run ads, which is my way of getting new eyes on my business, my core way. And then I cultivate the relationship on email and my Facebook group. So I email, I feel like you can have in addition to one place because it's like foundational. But the reason I believe this is because we have limited capacity. Everyone I work with feels stretched. No one is coming to me saying, I've just got all of this time and I don't know what to do with it. But also, technology is progressing so fast. The idea that you could be successful on YouTube whilst keeping up with Instagram Reels, whilst keeping up with LinkedIn, and navigating all the Facebook changes, and to be successful in all, for me, is just ridiculous. So, only at the point where you've grown and you have a team who are going to take responsibility for those platforms, do I think you should diversify. And the stage of business I work with people that are typically kind of 2 to 10K months, they're not at that stage where they've got a massive team. So focus on one place and master it. And I've never had a client disprove me on this. I've never had one go, well, I'm crushing it on YouTube and Instagram. So for me, it's just evidential that I can see it doesn't work because you don't have the bandwidth to do both.
Does that mean that because there's a lot of conversations around AI repurposing and turning, this, for example, will become 25 plus clips, right? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. But are we potentially not doing the original thing that we're repurposing a disservice then, would you say?
Well, I guess it comes down to the fact of, does just repurposing a post onto a platform, is that effective? So say my base platform is my Facebook group, and I just repurpose that onto Instagram as a grid post. Well, grid posts aren't really working right now. It's actually reels and stories. So unless this idea, because a lot of my clients say this, oh, it doesn't take long, Gemma. I'm just going to take this post and put it on 4 different places. But that headspace and those tweaks you have to do, and then you're probably not actually using an effective strategy because you're repurposing and you're not thinking about how to leverage that platform's unique features. So I guess if your repurposing strategy is effective, I would question, is it? Is it being effective?
Yeah, and I think that says a lot about like any business as a whole, right? Which is the concept around, is what you're outputting, is what you're doing actually going to be overly valuable or not, right? So I'll give you an example. Networking is a big conversation, right? Traditionally, we go to a networking room, we have a conversation, 6 to 12 months later, there's work that appears from that room, whether that's someone in the room or someone who knows someone in the room, right? Sure. But actually, a lot of people that I'm talking to at the moment pretty frequently is, yeah, I know I do a lot of content, but there's a lot of reasons why I do that, excluding what I gain from it, right? The main reasons why I continue to do content is keeps me sharp, keeps me getting better at the craft, keeps me becoming a better storyteller, because it's what I sell. So it's slightly different for me, and I can and I should potentially lean more into content because it's the narrative piece that I sell. It's because it's my craft specifically. But if it's not your craft, actually, do you need to do as much? Should you do as much? Should you go more narrow, which I guess is your argument, I guess is your point of view, right? Rather than, I'm going to be really, really broad. And I guess we shouldn't not ask about the AI conversation, right? Because if it's a bandwidth question or a time investment question, there is ways. Ops Clips is one. Other AI cutters are available. But where does that sit? Because surely in some ways some people would argue, I guess, that that's the best of both worlds, because you can focus in on this element, this long term piece on YouTube or Facebook, etc. But then you can still gain the short form elements of using AI, because it doesn't take as much from you doing AI, right, or using it through AI cutting.
I guess I come at it from a stance of, yes, you could, but is it the best use of your time? That if you go deep on one platform, that's a faster route to growth than going wide with all of these repurposing tools, hoping that you get a few extra leads. It's like, is the number and volume of leads you would get from the repurposing platform worth the effort? Yes, you can shortcut it, but it's still headspace. You still got to do it. And I've used AI lots to try those, cut short. They're never at the standard I would personally want my name behind on a platform. And I'm not a very polished business owner, but I have a high bar for my content. And I do think for most people, unless you're referral based, content marketing is key. And content is how I've grown my business. I'm a big introvert, so I'm never going to be the person networking at events. Like, if someone invites me to present, I'll say yes, but I'm not going to be using that as a core strategy for me. So for me, it's content, and it's choosing the platform where I can best leverage my skill set, which is long form content, which is why I prefer writing emails and recording longer form videos.
I think that's a really important point, which I wasn't actually going to bring up to the show, but as you brought it up, I think it's really important to talk about, which is some people look at what I do and they go, wow, that's really extroverted. Okay, but I lean into that and I like that and I enjoy that, which in turn means I'm going to do it sustainably, right? Because I actually really enjoy the process of doing it. But if you don't, if you detest it, and I'm not saying like, oh, I did it, it was uncomfortable, and then I got to the point where I was good enough at it. When you get to that point where you're good enough at it, and it's not uncomfortable because it's new, I mean, you still dislike it even though you're good at it, because it just doesn't fit with you, then find something that you really enjoy. And that's what I said to a good set of friend of mine, but also people were asking me, like, things are slower. Okay, and that leads me on to my next question, which is, like, some people are worried, right? Wrongly, rightly, etc. There's been a change of government. There's, maybe been some up and downs in the economy. Maybe they've had, unfortunately, lost some clients, etc. They're concerned about where things are heading, where the future of business is. I've always been of the mind, well, if I keep showing up and I keep doing what I know has worked previously, it will then work. The timeline maybe not on my watch, but it will work eventually, right? What would you say to people right now who are concerned, who are worried, who are, I guess, not looking to potentially jump ship, but are like, okay, things aren't as what we would expect them to be?
Well, for me, the entrepreneurial journey is highs and lows anyway. You've got to be willing to ride the lows. And every time there's a low, I like to visually imagine half my competition has just dropped out. So I'm celebrating that I'm the one consistent with my offer, consistent with my message. But I do think we have a responsibility to innovate and pivot and think about where the need is. So it may be that some industries need to pivot and need to think about that. And that's why we have to be the marketer and the business owner, as well as the creative that delivers the service, because we've seen our high street shops get wiped out. We've seen things that we didn't think would happen. And therefore I think it would be naive not to proactively thinking of the risks. I went to a brilliant training session that a guy ran once, and he got us to analyze the risk of our business. And I had never really considered at that point how risky it is to just have one business. And he got us to forecast how your business could go under in 24 hours. So all of the brand reputation damage, all of the different things, a security hack, a tech blunder. And then you realize, oh, this business that maybe has provided me consistent income for 5 years isn't quite as stable as I thought it would be. And I think the ones that survive are the ones thinking about that and proactively making decisions as well.
Yeah, and I think we all, those who've been in business longer than 4 years, will testify to the reality, which was COVID, which was, for me personally, oh, cool, I'm booked for the next month and a half. Oh, shit, no, I'm not. right, in the
Yeah.
span of a week, right? And it was this real reality, which was I need to diversify my income, I need to diversify my offer to an extent, right? As in, I need to find other ways to make money that are not necessarily tied to video production as a whole. Sure, I'll do video production. Sure, video production is great, etc. But and that's something that I've always tried to build for the last 5 years plus, has been right. Okay, so am I, number one, developing a new skill set that could become monetizable at some point down the line in the next 5 years? Yes or no? Number two, am I developing a quote unquote passive revenue stream? So a YouTube channel could be an example, right? There's no such thing as passive soul, like completely. You have to put in work first, but it can potentially serve you. And I guess in some ways this has come full circle back to the start of the conversation, which was around courses, because some people saw courses as a completely passive revenue stream. You make a course, you put it online, you sell it, cool, job done. In reality, if it was that simple, everyone would do it, and then therefore no one would do it, right? And that's why I think your approach of actually having a more personal touch is more important. But for those people who are maybe new in business and like, okay, so I need to market, I need to continue with my offering, I need to, etc. I mean, how do we start with that? Because it's very easy for both of us who are very aware of creating content and then what can happen from that snowball effect. But what if you were starting again, what would you start with? From a creating content point of view.
When I first started, all I started doing, and my coach was the leader of this, right? He's like, I just want you to start posting about the thing you want to talk about in the only place you have people in front of you right now. And that was my personal Facebook. And it felt deeply uncomfortable. And I thought, this is such a big leap of confidence for me. But I just started doing it. Most people don't. Most people say, oh, I can't because it's my friends and I can't talk about business. And they put all of these blocks up. But because, my motivation was to leave my corporate job, create an income that allowed me to be more present for my son, I just started doing it. And it very slowly, I think this is the thing, snowballed. And I did things like I ran an in-person event in Nottingham where I live, and I charged £10 a ticket, and I had 30 people who didn't know me buy this ticket and come and find me, and I got 5 clients from that event just by showing up and serving. So for me, you just have to figure out how to start serving, run free calls, post free content, run free workshops without any attachment to it going anywhere. And that service comes back round. And I think some people expect to be paid before they start serving.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's a principle that I've followed for many, many years, which is what community karma are you building, right? Like, so for me, for example, what events can I cover that potentially put Salisbury in a good place or the area I'm showcasing in a good place? And then potentially what small connections or etc. are either going to see the video or am I going to meet on the day, right? And what does that then lead into in 6 months' time? I think we're in a culture specifically which I feel is quite dangerous, which is around this principle of I do an action, I need a response straight away. I do an action, I need a piece of feedback instantly that it's gonna mean something of value soon. In most cases, payment, right? That's what we're all looking for, I guess, in some ways you could say. But for me, I've kind of turned that on its head and I've said, okay, well, actually, let's look at that. Sure, you need to run a cash flow business. Sure, you need to be cash flow positive. Sure, you need to be making profit to stay alive. Sure, absolutely. But actually think about when you are sustaining and you are fine, how are you then still working hard but by building your midterm and long-term growth? Because that's where the brand's going to build. That's when that brand equity is really going to lean in. And the amount of things that have happened just because, oh, I know Colton because he's the video guy, or I know Brunton Media because of the XYZ. I'm sure you have many stories of the same, but it comes from potentially years. And one of the first people I ever spoke to about this said some really good advice, which was like, are you willing to make today difficult for tomorrow, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I need to not eat today so I can save money. That's not what is implying. It's saying if you have an extra X amount of time, can you create a piece of content that then lives online to then help you move forward in 6 months' time, right? But also just from the passive reality that you've stayed alive for that long will show the market that you're a good investment, is my view at least. Because especially when we're seeing kind of medium-sized to large-scale businesses start to unfortunately go under, I think that's a real example of, and I've always looked at it, focusing on maybe the income isn't there, but what skills am I gaining right now that will then allow to serve me for that period of time? So I think it's about, for me anyway, it's about changing your relationship to what you're gaining in regards to like, because it's very easy in the start to go, oh, I'm gaining money, cool, great, I'm gaining a foothold. But did you always look at just your revenue return, or was it actually no, I can now do this, and now that means I can serve better because I have this experience, I have this story, I have this new skill?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think at the beginning, my goal was like income based in that I was so desperate to leave my job. But that was actually quite detached from the actions I took, because I think because the first coach I ever had was very clear on this no agenda, like low attachment to everything you do. And so for me, the audience growth piece was as exciting. The community building piece was like, wow, 150 people want to listen to me, 2,000 people want to listen to me. And this has grown steadily, about 1,000 on year. So not huge numbers, not these kind of like 0 to 100,000 in 3 months. But now I have, say, on my email list, nearly 7,000 people who choose to read my emails, most of whom will never buy from me. Most of whom don't even run group programs, but were on my list beforehand and like my emails, so stay on it. And that free legacy, that sort of like my gift to the world, like the fact that random strangers care about my random thought ramblings and prioritize that and send me emails back saying yours is one of the few emails I read because of what you share and how honest and vulnerable you are, that for me is worth anything. That's the meaning for me. And then of course being able to create the income out of that is wonderful too. But I also think the skills as an entrepreneur that you learn, I could sell anything. I ever since I went to that financial risk workshop, I'm like, okay, need to diversify, need another business. So I'm constantly daydreaming, like, what could I sell? Like, what else could I give to the world to create money whilst having an impact?
I think that's a really important point as well, because a lot of people, when they get into business, they say, oh, I'm unemployable now, right? I actually disagree. Like, I think you're the opposite, because I think in a world where you did a business for 10 years and you chose to get a job or you forced into it or whatever, you're actually probably really valuable to an employer because
Massive.
you've done the top of the tree. So like when you slot into a team, right, it's very likely you'll be given or very quickly go into a managerial or team leadership level role somewhere quite quickly because you're not having to be trained from the ground up, right? Because you can dynamically problem solve quickly. You're naturally a team person. You know how to communicate. It's all of these passive things that we gain as an entrepreneur, but also the confidence to be able to go in and say, actually, to a job, say, actually, look, I could be a real asset to your company if you choose to stay. And then it's actually the ball is in the company's court rather than you trying to sell, the job or get the job because, oh, look at me, I need a job. It's actually more, why should I work with you as a company? Is it the culture? Is it the finance? Is it etc.? Is it the meaningful change you can make, etc.? And I think to an extent, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like, because some people have asked me, oh, what are you going to do if like you choose for whatever reason to go get a job and then you have a gap on your CV? I'm like, I'm not going to have a gap. Why do you feel like I'm going to have a gap? What, because I was in non-traditional employment, that means I have a gap? No, it just means I was doing my own thing for that period of time. And actually, if you can think about it from a comms point of view and how you articulate yourself, in my view, as I say, that would be a better conversation to start an interview with for a job or even any position or any client, to say, actually, well, I did this off my own back and I achieved these things. So I have skills in XYZ, right? And I think, and that in some ways is the future proofness. And it leans into your conversation around community karma as well, which is like, in a world where you do need a job, how much karma have you already built in your network, and how likely is it that you could ring one or two people and probably get 4 or 5 pretty good job offers in a world where you wanted to or needed to, right? And that's the question I have for people is like, I guess it leads on to my next question, which is about legacy, but what is your legacy? What matters to you from a legacy point of view? But also for those who are listening, why should they care more about legacy than anything else? Because for me, legacy is the only thing that matters, really. Because yeah, I would like to make a living. Yeah, I would love to do this for as long as I can, sure. But to be honest, when you build systems that work, that's quite simple after that. because this you do the action, the result happens, you get the money, the cash flow, the reputation, the connection, whatever it is you need, right? So is legacy more important?
So my honest answer to that is I couldn't give a flying fuck about legacy.
Okay,
Like
fair
for me
enough.
personally, it's like for me, what is the most important thing is being present moment to moment with my family, with my clients, with these micro life experiences, because that's all we have. And so that's the most important thing for me, surrounding myself with good people that create good conversation, that go deep, that are authentic and vulnerable, and not this surface level BS we seem to kind of accept as the norm. So if people remember me, beyond that, or like, what do I leave in the world? I just hope that I had a cool conversation with someone one day that they appreciated or remembered or thought that that was nice. Like that's, it's not like I want to hit like my 70s and go, yeah, I've made my stance on evergreen group programs. It's like it's just a niche that's very unsexy when you look at it. It's like just a business model. For me, I'm really interested in marketing and the culture of marketing and the brainwashing that marketing has done. And I guess if I did leave a legacy, I just want to be remembered as someone that bucked that trend, that showed you that you could market in a way that felt more authentic, that felt good, that was less about sales and more about connection.
Okay, I mean, I would argue that you are by proxy creating a legacy by doing that, right? Maybe it's
Well,
not
I think I
driving.
just talked myself into that
I
legacy
think I
from
think
your
you did, yeah.
question.
I think you did as well, which is really funny. But the reason why I always ask that question is I think for me, it's the only for me anyway. Personally, it's the only thing that really matters because everything else to me is like, okay, cool, I made money, cool, great, cool. But for me, it's like for me, legacy is what did I leave the community? Did I leave the community in a better place than when I found it? Right, whatever community that may be, and I feel like you, to an extent, have the same thing. Maybe you necessarily don't appreciate it as it is could be a part of your legacy. I would believe it is, but I think that's the important thing that we sometimes misunderstand as a business owner is the knock-on effects to other people. Even if that's a kid who's like, "Hey, I want to work for myself. I want to do my business thing." You might be the thing, or a woman in your case, a broker in my case, whatever, or vice versa, that sparks them to actually do the thing rather than sitting on their morals and going, "Oh, I'm going to go and be traditional because XYZ says I need to go and do this and then do uni and then do a job and then climb the corporate ladder and then get a house and so on." And look, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But the crux is what I guess external and the stuff I'm really focusing on at the moment is like what external thing is happening that I can't necessarily track but could be really valuable in the longevity of the world, right? So is it a just a thought process or someone thinking about something, like can they do something different in their community which would like make it easier for a percentage of people perhaps, right? Or could they give a percentage of their income if their goal is like I need to make money? Okay, cool. But then are they going to say that they're going to say give 10% to X charity and that then
Yeah.
does infinite meaning of good because and this is one of the things where I think that you need to ask yourself, I guess, in some ways, what drives you, and that's why I always focusing on legacy for me because I know it's that kind of fire, it's the thing that I'll constantly come back to and go, no, I remember why I'm doing it, especially on the hard days where it's like, well, business isn't doing what I expect it to, or things are not going as well as I planned, or I had a bunch of cancellations, a bunch of complications. I'm like, fuck, but no, remember why you started. No, but remember why you're doing it. And I think for me, I mean, did you always have that? Is that just kind of like the quote unquote entrepreneurial spirit? Or is that something that would you say someone can develop? Is I guess that fire
No.
in them to say we need to keep going.
Well, I got very disillusioned by the system. So I was a good girl, right? And I became a teacher and then went into corporate. And it was only when I had my son that I realized that this system that I had bought into and sort of been conditioned, you climb the ladder, you become management. And I've always been ambitious. So it was I'm not going to stay on that level. It's going to be management. And then I had my son and I was managing a nationwide team, a traveling sales team. And all of a sudden, that job and motherhood were completely incompatible. And I felt so disillusioned that no one had explained this to me. Like that this was like, oh, well, this isn't going to work. So I spent 9 months of my maternity leave with many of the other women just going, what the fuck are we going to do? We can't go back to the job but we need the money and X, Y, and Z, and we want fulfillment, and we don't just want to be a mum. I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mum. And so that's where my entrepreneurial fire came from. I don't think we educate enough kids on a different way. My son, who's 7, is like, yeah, I'm going to run my own business. For him, it's the norm because it's all he's seen. But both my parents were head teachers, and they worked 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every single day. And that was I got taught a brilliant work ethic, but it wasn't a family orientated work ethic because they didn't have capacity. They were too busy earning money and working to do that. So the motherhood piece lit the entrepreneurial spirit. And then once I was free and realized I could make money from it, I was like, why isn't everyone doing this? Obviously, a lot of my friends say, how do you cope with the stress? How do you cope with the ups and downs? And it is all encompassing. But for me, I wouldn't choose any other route in a million years unless I hit rock bottom and need the money. And then, of course, I'd just go get a job at Tesco's or whatever. But it's like, for me, I love that I am the maker of my future. I love that it all falls to me. And I love the ultimate responsibility that that creates because I'm a wildly independent person and I like that it all falls to me.
Yeah. And I think that's another really important point, which is like, do you want, and I had this in my part-time. I've been very fortunate to know what I wanted to do very early, then knew I had to just build it. So then I just got to work and I got to a position where I could do it and I did it. So I haven't had a lot of corporate jobs. Hasn't really happened because I got quite lucky, you could say. But I do remember it when I had a more traditional job. And I was always of the mind of like, that phone in the office could ring and I could then not have a job, right? That could happen today, right? And then I'm fucked. Like, what am I going to do? Right? But for me, like, people go, oh, as you say, like, how do you deal with the up and downs, and etc. It's like, actually, it's the reason why I know I'll be fine regardless, because the, grunt job will always exist, okay? It will always be there, and if you need to do it, you'll do it. Sure, fine. But you'll do it with the objective in mind of going, okay, I'm going to do 6 months, and I'm going to do as many hours as I possibly can. I'm going to live as frugally as possible so that I can have the freedom again, right?
Yeah.
To be able to rebuild and etc. And so many business owners have had that reality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that reality. I think it's about understanding how did you get there and how can you not go there again through your own decision making. You take 100% accountability for that. But the crux and the thing that I find interesting talking to people with more traditional jobs, and I still believe that 97% should have a more traditional job. I do. I think it's better for them. From their work-life balance and like them as a person and their stress level and like everything. I think you need to be a Pacific-minded person to be an entrepreneur. You just do. Because there is no day off. It doesn't exist, right? Yes, you might have a day where you're not working. That's not the same because you're still thinking about things. You have to be slightly, the best way I can describe it is like you have to be slightly ADHD in your mind to be like, oh, I'm going to think about this. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I've thought about this. Oh, what about this? Oh, what about doing this? And that doesn't mean you execute on all of them. It means that you're constantly evaluating and re-evaluating where you are in business and what you're doing and how you're doing it and trying to push yourself forward. And for me, as someone who really focused on self-development, that's why I'm in business. That's actually the real reason. Yeah, sure, making money, I need to live, etc., etc. All of these things are a good idea. But actually the real reason is it forces me outside my comfort zone every single day. It forces me to do something harder. It forces me to do a difficult activity, which I know will in turn make me a stronger, more independent, etc., person as a whole. But for those who, have got this far, want to hear more about what you do, etc., where's best for people to connect with you?
So my website is the obvious place to go, gemmagilbert.com. And on there, on the front page, is my workshop series. And this is like my signature 3-part workshop series that takes you through my whole philosophy. So we compare one-to-many models. We look at like, what would it look like to focus on a higher ticket group? And then what would it look like to really master your marketing and sales systems to fill that group consistently? I also have a Facebook group. If you just search Gemma Gilbert, that's kind of the other place that I do trainings in every week.
Magic. And for those who have taken some inspiration, taken some plans, who are maybe going to either start something new, start a side thing, start a coaching thing, whatever it may be, what advice would you want to leave them with?
The first advice would be like, find the people to follow that are your people and curate that feed. Like, cut out the bullshit, cut out the bad vibes, cut out anyone that brings up a past trigger and a trauma, and just follow those people that inspire you and can teach you to do the thing to cut the corners. Secondly, you have to embrace that you're a service provider and a marketer. And where I see people go wrong is they just don't, they fight this resistance. I don't want to market. I don't want to be like, that's the job, right? You can't just get the job and be like, yeah, but I'm not going to do half of it. You're going to do the job badly. So go in with your eyes wide open that if you choose this path, you are taking on the role as salesperson, marketer, service provider, brand designer, and everything you might feel massively unskilled to do right now. And just enjoy the ride. Like, if the journey isn't worth it for you, if you're just in it for the outcome, you may as well not start. So be in it for the journey and be willing to do anything and everything on that journey to sustain yourself till you get to the point you want, and enjoy the time freedom that comes with it as well.
Thank you ever so much for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this conversation with myself and Gemma, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And if you would like not to miss the next conversation that I put up on the channel that will be in the next couple of weeks, then why not be subscribed, and I'll see you very, very soon.